Death to g3. Checkmate. Wait, what? Hi everyone, I'm Jacob, I'm the CowHatLibrarian, and this was a fun one. It is A Game of Noctis by Deva Fagan. And this was an interesting one. I quite enjoyed it. Our heroine, Pia, lives in the city of Dantessa. It's a place where the great game rules all, where citizens have a score, their gamer score of sorts, that ranks them in the city's hierarchy. And every interaction between people can take the form of a game with an accompanying bet. And that's how quite a few people make their livings. And Pia's been taught how to play the games and play them well by her grandfather, who also worked as an accountant. While Pia was growing up, her grandfather served as an accountant for a great family of the city until they accused him of making mistakes and fired him. And they were left to scramble for a hand-to-mouth existence in the slums. And Pia has never really forgotten that. She's never forgiven that family for it either. Neither the patriarch of the family who did the firing, nor the son of the family who is her age and who she thought was her friend. So in the course of growing up, Pia becomes quite good at games and good at winning wagers on them to help keep her family afloat. Her grandfather has gotten worse and worse and worse though. And he reveals that his score is effectively 0. And that's a major problem. When people's scores reach 0, they're taken to the island of the pawns, where they do menial labor and live the barest existence possible to help support things happening elsewhere in the city. All of this is enforced by arbiters, these weird constructs that come around and enforce wagers and the rules of the game and make judgments on the players when there's a conflict. The arbiters also enforce the rules about moving people to the island of the pawns. And when Pia's grandfather's score reaches 0, an arbiter comes to collect him. And Pia tries to prevent it from happening and is punished by her gamer score being dropped by 10 points, which is a substantial drop. And she's given an offer by the arbiter, one she'd forgotten about. You can buy back someone from the island of the pawns for 10,000 segna. Segna is the currency of their city. And Pia thinks about this for a while, but according to her, it would take a ridiculous amount of matches and she wouldn't have time, and there's no way she could do it except for one, by competing in the great game, the Game of Noctis, where she could join a team, and by chance she impresses a player who's forming a team, to play a game that is essentially like an enormous combination of chess and Dungeons and Dragons, but with a third player, the personification of Death, or Lady Death herself in the big game. And the winner of that competition, the winning team, will get enough money that she could buy her grandfather back. And the story goes from there. She joins the team after impressing one of the players, and they practice and play games and learn more about the great game and find out very strange stuff about the behind-the-scenes mechanisms controlling this city in the great game. And this was really, really good. It reminded me of the Justin Timberlake movie In Time, where the currency of the world was time itself, and people could bet time or give time to one another or steal time from one another, and when your time ran out, that was it, you died. And the gamer score mechanism of that and demotion to the island of the pawns made me think of that quite a bit. There is a definite Hunger Game element here in the bigger competition, because the the richer competing teams can buy perks, one-time boosts that can be used within the game that they can buy out of their Cigna. And of course, Pia's team, being from the poorer side of town, can't afford these things unless they earn them through alternate means. And so they're heading into this game at a big disadvantage, the same way that Katniss was at a big disadvantage in the Hunger Games, because District 13 couldn't afford a lot in the way of sponsorship, whereas the richer districts could send body armor and weapons and food and medicine to their tributes. This was really, really good. I enjoyed the heck out of it. I loved Pia as a character. I liked the idea of this whole society based on games and challenges and competitions, and finding out that there's more to it than anyone thought, and that the great game might not be as balanced and fair as Pia had always relied on it being. It was good. I recommend it. If you like the Hunger Games, I recommend this. If you liked something like maybe, although I wasn't a huge fan of it personally, if you liked something like Mr. Lemoncello's Library, and you wanted something a little more adventurous with more stakes and was a little more serious, a little more mature, this might be a good one to move up to. Now, with that said, it wasn't perfect. There are spoilers ahead because I have to talk about the deal breakers. So there are two deal breakers. One is that in the course of the story, Pia reveals that there's a special win condition where the two players playing Noctis can work together to defeat Lady Death on the board, and it triggers an ending to the game where they both win. And that comes into play in the finale of the great game, and it triggers all sorts of interesting stuff happening. And I have a hard time believing that in the history of this city, no one had ever thought to try that in the great game. Like, I know the idea is that you're out to win it for yourself. You're selfish. It's harder to win that way. But with all the stuff I've seen online, with speedrunners doing ridiculous stuff online and trying just incomprehensible tricks and challenges to beat a game a certain way. I saw an article online 2 weeks ago about someone who figured out a way to beat Super Mario 64 without ever actually jumping, which sort of blew my mind. If there are people like that in our world, how would there not be at least a couple people in the great game who would think, hey, we should try to take out Lady Death this game and see what happens? So it's a little bit unrealistic to me that that's never happened. I suppose it could be one of those things where their society just hasn't run long enough to have someone else attempt it, I suppose. The other thing, and this gets back to what the deal breakers are to me, a place for me to nitpick something that takes me out of the story. When Pia's grandfather is taken to the Isle of the Pawns and she's trying to figure out how to buy him back, she's looking at the task of winning 10,000 Cigna to buy him back, and talking about how impossible it is because it would take thousands of games. It would take her months or years to earn that money, and it's just so impossible, and there's no way to do it except going in the great game with the team. And she needs to take a minute and do her math. She needs 10,000 Cigna. Even if she stayed in her area of town, she identified that the highest ranking games did run into hundreds of Cigna. Even if we assume that the betting maxed out at 200, because she said hundreds of Cigna, that's 50 games when she has 100 Cigna to work with. Now, I realize that's the optimistic side, that she would have to win every game, and there should be room in there for her to lose some money and so on. But one, it would take her winning 50 games once she made her way up to 100 Cigna. Two, it certainly sounds like money equals social mobility in their world. That once she had enough money, she could start betting with people in other areas of the city and making even more. And her suggestion that it would take thousands of games is just, it's ridiculous. She did not do the math, and the author did not do the math. And that's disappointing, because I understand they wanted to put the odds against her. I understand they wanted to give her no other recourse but to participate in the great game and find a way to get into it. But when you start with 10 Cigna and you're a good game player, even using a fairly conservative strategy where you figure that you'll win 2/3 of your games and you only bet a quarter of your money at a time, like I sat there and made a spreadsheet, and it would not take thousands of games. It would not take months and years. This was an oversight, and it took me out of the book for a bit. I think there was a better way to do it. Maybe a stricter time limit on retrieving your loved one from the Isle of the Ponds, or something else that compelled her to stay in her area of the city, that made it clear she could not go anywhere else, and that for whatever reason there were only a handful of people who would bet even 100 Cigna on a game. But the way it's written, none of that exists, and it's a little bit disappointing. Anyway, rant over. As the story continues, she and her team get into the great game. They find out that there is someone behind the scenes planning the great game and setting up what challenges are going to be part of it, and that they're influenced by people in the town, and that there are people who sneak in and learn what's going to be happening in these games when they're supposed to be surprises, and that other teams are getting a huge advantage as a result of this. And it all comes together in a really, really good final game and battle. Lady Death was a fantastic character. It was really, really neat hearing about her historical role in the games and how she's just kind of tired of it all at this point. I like the characters, I like the world, and other than my nitpicking, I really liked it. Go borrow it from your local library. While I'm on that topic, if you use and appreciate the services offered by your public library, why not take just 1 minute and tell the powers that be exactly that? Tell your mayor, tell your council member, tell your MP or MLA that you use and appreciate the services offered by your public library. We're at a time where some libraries are having trouble finding sustainable funding to continue improving the materials, programs, and services they offer, and a few good words in the right ears might make a world of difference. If by some chance you're a library staff member, don't forget, watching my videos counts as professional development time. With that, thank you for listening to me gush about a Game of Noctis and whine about my nitpicking. By all means, please like, please subscribe, and please check back and see what else I have to talk about from the CowHat Library. Thank you. Bye now.